Welcome, everybody, to our new Witty Women in Technology International Hall of Fame class. We're thrilled to have Dr. Turbyfill here, who's class of 2005.
When was I adopted? Yeah, probably about 2005. Who cares?
We're going to put all the comments in the notes and excited, and you'll learn more about today. This inductee. Hemma, great to have you. Dr. Turbyfill, over to you.
Uh, I am delighted today to introduce Hemma Prafullchandra. She is currently the CTO of SolidCore.ai, a startup. Previously, she was Chief Technical Officer of Microsoft 365 Security, Compliance, and Management. She influenced the M365 SCM vision and product plans and worked closely with customers, partners, analysts, and industry bodies to deeply understand their needs and build mindshare of Microsoft cybersecurity strategy and solutions. Hemma has authored 14 patents, managed intellectual property programs and product innovations, and frequently speaks on cybersecurity challenges and technologies. She has over 32 years of industry experience developing network and security products, standards, and best practices. Hemma is a member of ForgePoint Capital Advisory Council and has served for 6 years on NIST VCAT. She is an advocate for diversity and inclusion and an active mentor and coach for cybersecurity professionals. So welcome, Hemma.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. That was a long bio read. I also want to thank David and the entire Witty community. I'm deeply honored, obviously, by this recognition, given all the past as well as present Witty inductees or Hall of Famers, like Carolyn, right? It does matter when you were inducted because that means that Witty's been around that long, as well as that this need to have a forum for women that are in technology is, of course, still much needed. So I'm just grateful. I'm also, of course, grateful to all my past managers that helped me, supported me and helped me build the career I have today.
Well, thank you, Hemma, and welcome again. I want to ask you a few questions. It'll actually be more of a discussion than just a Q&A, but let's get started with that. So question one is, when and how did you get into computer science?
Well, a long, long, long time ago, there lived a little girl in the land of United Kingdom who was fortunate enough to go to school in London. So we're talking 35 plus years ago. So when I was in school, my school participated in a program to encourage more girls to consider science-oriented careers. And so I got to spend the entire week at the Imperial College of London, living on campus and spending that whole week with professors and individuals that had careers in those science fields. So, mechanical engineers, doctors, you name it, they were all sort of not entire campus filled, but lots of them. So we could spend time talking and understanding what those careers meant. Now, before this opportunity, I was, like any other child, dreaming about crazy careers. Like I wanted to become a professional dancer or a barrister, lawyer in the US, or even a doctor, right? And my mom had said no to all of them, that they weren't wise choices for Indian where I would have to balance my work life and ambition with family life, and family took precedence. That's how I was brought up. And so she was pushing for me to become a pharmacist where we could potentially own a shop and run it together or something like that. Of course, none of that happened. So based on the week at Imperial where I was exposed to all these, what I found interesting was that computer science was still very new and had the least amount of literature on it. So I'm like, that's it. Full of opportunity. They don't know much about it. I'm going to go do that. So I ended up doing undergrad at University College London in computer science with electronic engineering. I was one of 10 students in this class. Now, it's so new, right? Like, it's ridiculous that there were only 10 students. So,
Women were there.
so I was the only one out of the 10 in my class, but in the pure computer science class, I want to say there was 30% were women.
Oh, that's good.
So not bad when I look at it from the entire program. And then, of course, once I graduated, I got my first job in Palo Alto, working on the OSI stack, so networking protocols, and moved to California.
Well, that's a very interesting beginning. I wish I'd had an intro like that to computer science when I was choosing a field, but I actually started in psychology and then moved to computer science. But in psychology, I was learning experimental design, which is very applicable to what I ended up doing in computer science. Um, and we're both used to being the only woman in the room.
Exactly, exactly.
So, what was the hardest issue for women in technology when you started in computer science?
Yeah, so I want to say that the beauty of living in the Bay Area or any hub, right, where there's a lot of tech vendors, is that I literally crossed the road and joined Sun Microsystems. This is back in 1990. Um, and but it was a choice I was, not something I had planned on doing, right? What had happened was that the company I had joined, they decided that they were going to essentially stop working on some of the OSI products in order to focus more on the internet-based products. So what was happening at that time, there were two emerging technology stacks, or so to speak. OSI maybe better established, more Europe, rest of the world, and the internet set of protocols were just emerging. And so most companies were trying to figure out what to do. I joined Sun because they still were implementing the OSI stack in the US. But quickly after, I was forced with another decision because they moved that work to France. And so typically what ends up happening, right? Like when you're forced with a choice, my advice is not to be afraid, right? You can always go back, but to forge a new path for yourself, believe in yourself and go take that alternate path because you never know what it might lead to. So I actually went from being a networking focused software engineer to a cybersecurity software engineer.
When did you do that?
92.
92. That was quick. And boy, did you pick a hot field.
Didn't know it back then that it was going to be hot or remain hot. Yeah, for sure. And so some of the, I think, like back to your question, like I think that the choices we make early on, or even later in life, may not be when you want them to be made. They're sometimes forced on you.
Well, That's really interesting. I had no idea that was your background. And I think you were very fortunate to get early mentoring to help you choose a discipline. So, what's the most favorable change that you see today for women in computer science?
Yeah, so let me start with the hardest issues, right, that existed like when I got in. And there are sort of several, but I'll just talk about three top of mind. Like when I was starting, there were far too few women in the field, so not many role models when I first started. So even like in the Sun networking group, I want to say there were two women, the rest were men. When I moved into the operating system group, much more women. But if I look at just the security portion of that, the whole entire operating system team, again, I think I was the only one. So very few women has been a path, like as you mentioned, right, where it just was the situation. So there were very few role models that I could even think about or imagine alternate paths that would lead to something more. And so I couldn't rely on, what success would look like. I knew from just being in a hierarchy, success meant you meant climbing the ladder, which meant a managerial role, versus I could be someone like I am now, which is partially a manager, but still inventing, still innovating, still able to build products. So that was one. The other, I think, and this still holds true partially, is that it's somewhat of a boys' club back then because there were so fewer women. And depending on the team culture and obviously the organization, you either a part of it, that club, or you're not. And so there is like bias that is across the board, and most of us try to fit in. The question is, how far do you go? Do you change yourself completely to fit in? Like I've spoken to so many women where they'll be like, I dress different. I would never wear a skirt, right? Or I wore heels even though they showed my feet, right? Like, so how much do you change yourself in order to fit in? And then, of course, the last was, we don't have, back then, we didn't have the technology we have today. So I'm partially answering your question, which is, the forums like Witty didn't exist back in the early 90s. They, at least not that I knew of. So the ability to have the web, the ability to have search, the ability to have even some of the newer technology like generative AI, and being able to use the AI assistants, right? They have got the knowledge of the internet, not all of it correct, but they can help as a mentor, they can help those virtual assistants act as a coach, but even help you imagine, right? So I think the technology that we have today allows us to do more, to become better than we are.
Yeah, and it also enables you to get more visibility on the web as opposed to just through whatever the company arranges for you. This is a case in point for that. I would say that the hardest issue for women in technology when I started there weren't many women in technology. And so I was the only woman a lot. And the most favorable change, but we haven't done that. I want to know what you think the most favorable change is that you see today.
Yeah, and I mean, it's great because I do see a few. So the first, I think, is a greater. So like my managers were really good people and they afforded me flexible hours, right? So I could raise a family, right? I could go drop my kid, pick him up, and work after hours, right? I could work 2 a.m. if needed. So and not only my managers, but the company, right? Like back, I had an ISDN line when most people couldn't have that, flexibility. So I always had the ability to work from home, even though most of us worked in office. That has become a norm now, which is there is greater, work-life balance and the ability to work the hours, at least especially in our field, the hours you need uh, to balance, your other commitments. So I think that's been a good, and men are respecting that. They are also taking a greater role in raising the family. So I think overall that partnership, right, in terms of how you get your work done and manage whatever other commitments you have is really good. I think the other is, as you mentioned, now we do have a lot more role models. You could see successful career women that haven't had to change their personality, right? That it is okay to be soft-spoken and nerdy and like, me, be a co-founder and CTO of a stealth startup in the cyberspace. So I it's okay to be who you are. I think that has been also a really refreshing acceptance, at least for me, that you could be from whatever walk of life and personality and succeed, and you don't have to become overly aggressive in order to succeed. And I think the last is the number of forums, right? The communities like Witty or, Girls Can Code, just the number of supportive forums to help women further their career in our space. Like if you haven't searched, do search and find one that's local to you and not only volunteer, but mentor others, but also learn from others. I think those are the top three, I think, of what's good now.
Well, I can say that one of the things that you provide as a role model is proof that nice guys, you can be a nice guy and still be, or nice woman and still be respected and have the choice of a career, because you're one of the nicest people I know. And I'd say for me, when I first started and I was in graduate school, I tried everything. I tried changing my appearance, and that didn't work. And I didn't change my personality so much, but it was just a game of numbers, and there weren't that many women. There were maybe 4 women in the whole program, and the numbers were just against us. And so I think that it's just the pure numbers. It's not because people were really misogynistic or anything that caused a lot of harassment when I was younger, and also getting married helped get rid of some of that harassment. The other thing is I did try to change my personality, and it's impossible for me to do. I would try. I did have to get a bit tougher and understand that some people are win-win and some people were win-lose. And when you're dealing with a win-win person, you can be honest, you can be open, you can work together. And when you're dealing with a win-lose person, you don't volunteer so much information, and you're careful what you say to them, and you're a little bit more suspicious in negotiations and things like that, and have to protect your work more so you get credit for it. But the other thing that I think has improved today is the number of women and the amount of diversity in computer science has gone up. And I think that trend will continue. And we do have groups like Witty that really focus on mentoring women and men and women and help them acquire the skills they need in dealing with both, your work-life balance and also jobs and job hunting, things like that, and how to be successful in your job. So I think that's the biggest improvement. And I have a lot of hope that Gen Z will push the boundaries of all of that because it's a very different generation. I have very high hopes for them as well.
Yeah, I do want to say that our work in bringing more women into our space is not done. It's improved quite a bit since when I joined and since when you joined. But I think the challenge remains that we're still underrepresented. I think we're like 20 to maybe 25%. And the pay gaps continue, but also that the pipeline, right? It seems to go in peaks and valleys. So the pipeline is not sufficient to really get to a 50-50 in the sector, right? In terms of representation, we just don't have, because we're losing more women that it got into this, but are leaving the workforce in this career, not necessarily for a different career, they're just leaving the workforce. And so I think that is problematic. And we should think about programs that allows women to leave the workforce while they're raising their little ones and then onboarding them back later in their career or later in their life. I think that would be really good.
Yeah, and it helps if there are also men involved in this and they're taking time out too to keep kids. They have a lot more sympathy than they used to because it's used to be long ago, even before computer science, that when women worked, their husbands would say, well, you can work as long as you take care of the children and the household and everything else. So do everything we're doing, and then also you can work as kind of a hobby or something. And now men like that don't get very far with women in general. It's not a deal that people would make at this point in time. So, and go ahead.
Like in my 35-year career or so, I've only had 2 women managers. One was you. So only one other, right? The rest have been men. And so it's great to have the men community that is sort of overrepresented, so to speak, support the few women that are there. And, and we as women in this space should encourage other women to recognize that they could have a career here.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've reached the end of our time. I would like to point out that the questions that you answered today are really important for anyone dealing with diversity issues and also people who are trying to pivot into or back into computer science. Because if you're out for a while, all the technology has changed. And you need to go back and say, now, what do I really want to work on that people need these days? And what are the hot fields to get in where there aren't that many people? And that'll make me more valuable. So I really want to thank you for being here. And I am so honored to be able to induct you into the Woody Hall of Fame. Just congratulations.
Appreciate that. If I can make a plug for my stealthy company, we are looking for Python engineers. So please ping me or send your resume.
We have made Witty. Thanks, Hemma. This is awesome. So great learning about your journey. Will you be at RSA next month?
Yes, we don't have a booth, but I will be attending a number of events and
Great. Yeah,
Networking.
I'll be up there for a couple days, so I look forward to seeing you.
Yeah, maybe we can connect you with some women in Witty too that need to know how to get into computer science or into computer security, because we get, especially about computer security, we get that question a lot because it's a pretty hot field right now. Well, it's been for a long time, but now it's really hot. So thank you, and hopefully you'll meet some more people at RSA.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you.
Right,
Bye, Betty.
Okay, we don't need to edit any of that, do we? I mean, I stumbled over a few words, but that's just me being authentic.